I don't know how much of a delay there is on YouTube. I should probably check that at some point, but I'm just going to talk for a couple of seconds here at the
There
beginning.
usually isn't one at all,
Oh, there is
actually.
none at
So
all. Okay, so it catches
usually
right up.
not.
Okay, well then in that case, hi, I'm Eric. I'm here with Joe.
Hey,
Hey, we're the Killer 2, and we're going to stream some Killer 7,
yes,
which
we
was
are.
just recent, very recently. Or we're the Capcom 2, and we're going to stream some Killer 7, I guess.
Yeah. What was the Capcom 5 or the Capcom 6?
I'm
What
pretty
was
sure it
it?
was 5. Resident Evil, this, Piano
Resident
7.
The Capcom 5 was, yeah, let's see. Piano 3,
Piano
Beautiful
3,
Joe,
and Beautiful Joe.
Resident Evil
And
4, Killer 7, and Dead Phoenix, which
yes,
was
that's the one that
Vaporware.
didn't come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, almost all of those games came out on other systems, so
Piano 3 is the only one that remains an exclusive to the Nintendo GameCube.
and that's like the weakest one.
As I'm saying, I've never played that game,
This is
but I
set in
feel
the
like
distant future of January 2010.
I'm told that it's not great, and it's sort of like it's like a dry run for Vanquish. Like it's like if Vanquish wasn't as good, it would kind of be Piano 3. That's the full extent of my knowledge about Piano 3.
It's interesting,
Is it?
but I never really I rented it, but I didn't put a tremendous amount of time into it. So
I have a lot. I can talk a lot more about Goichi Suda than I can about Piano 3. Let me tell you.
yeah. This was one of the weirdest video games I'd ever played when I played it in whatever year it was that it came out.
2003, I believe.
Yeah.
Originally. So yeah, this. I mean,
I may have played it
same.
in 2004, but regardless,
I really did not know what to make of this game
no.
at the time. But I was an art student at college at the time, right? I have a degree in theater, so I was hanging out in this Peck School of the Arts with all the other dweebs, and so this was the kind of thing that I was really into the idea that something this weird, something this sort of this is sort of like low budget David Lynchian, right? Like it doesn't really explore things in quite the same way that Lynch or even Cronenberg does, but it's sort of
I mean, I think it's more specific than the stuff that David Lynch does. Like, it's very much about this, like, weird culture war, and the symbols of these characters is a little bit more obvious than what David Lynch would have done, but...
right. But yeah, I was really into, I mean, I'm still really into this game for existing. One of my rotating backgrounds, of which obviously I think like everybody in this day and age, I have many, many desktop backgrounds that just sort of rotate through. But one of them is this very artsy image of Dan Smith with his giant 6-shooter like slung over his shoulder, like he's holding it like the way his idol sort of stance, right, where he's got it on his shoulder.
I'm gonna click.
Like
I'm gonna click to go
red.
through the tutorial and use the controls. So I want to see what buttons it is.
Yeah, how it works on
Use A to run, which is apparently left click.
Oh, you are doing it with
a mouse,
with keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, like,
what do you think the button is to ready my weapon? Okay, apparently it's space.
Right click. Okay.
Use B to lock onto targets.
I never remember the guy's name, but the like sub ball gagged. Which, how does he talk to you? How does he tell you things with the ball gag in? But that guy is pretty great.
Where's the blood?
That was weird.
What's that?
Oh, that's an intentional thing. I don't. Where it goes to like a really like pixelated explosion when you get hit by an enemy.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that didn't look probably quite so pixelated back in
back on the Nintendo GameCube.
Right, on a GameCube, on a CRT TV, and.
But you would feel like if when they did whatever they did to it to release it, like it's obviously in widescreen now, so this is not just like they didn't just dump a GameCube ROM into Steam and be like, here you go. pays $20. Like they clearly did stuff here, so it's weird to me that they wouldn't have like used a higher res image of an explosion. But
It wants me to lock onto targets with B. Oh, there we go.
So Perfidious Leaf wants to know if this game is by Suda51. It is. We were just talking about that actually. I think Suda51 is sort of the second very weird Japanese game designer to come around.
What do you think D-pad is here? All right, I don't need to learn.
I would hope that it's the arrow keys, but like, or was either that.
I'm gonna go back to the title screen and skip the tutorial since they didn't bother to update that with mouse controls. So I can't figure out what the D-pad is supposed to be. It doesn't seem to be a WASD. That didn't seem to work. So,
but I think like Kenji Eno was like the first really aggressively weird, but also like mainstream enough that a lot of people may have played his games, like Japanese game designer, or maybe game designer just kind of in general. And I think Suda kind of followed in his footsteps in a lot of ways. Although Suda's gotten more conventional, I think, although the same thing happened to Kenji Eno, he got more conventional as time went on as well, I suppose. So, but Suda's gotten a lot more conventional.
What was the most recent Suda game?
His most recent was, boy, I want to say Killer is Dead, but I feel like there's got to be something since then.
That just came out on PC. Can't be recently.
Yeah, he did. Well, he did one of his older games, The Silver Case, was never translated into English until recently, and that's on Steam now. But that's not an actually recent game.
I think it might be.
Oh no! What was that weird? What's that weird free to play thing?
I don't know.
Oh right.
Let
It Die or whatever.
Let it die. That's it.
I think that was.
That was like 2 years ago.
Let's see. But also he's got
the new one that just came to PC.
Yeah, there's a new No More Heroes coming.
Good.
To the Switch in January, but apparently So I still like the first two of those games a lot, and also this one is like a collaboration with a bunch of other like smaller studios. So it's like the No More Heroes thing is like a framing device, and then there's like smaller games made by different indie developers that are like games within the game, which sounds really interesting to me. At least that was like kind of what I'd heard initially. But that's coming out, I think, next month or something.
I think I'm good on anything having to do with Travis Touchdown, or I don't know. That second No More Heroes was trash garbage as far as I'm concerned.
I like the second No More Heroes. But let's see here.
I think I'm good on the controls.
So Perfidious Leaf asks, what else has he done? So we were just kind of talking about that. He did Lollipop Chainsaw, was probably his most mainstream thing, which he
I think No More Heroes
co-wrote with
No More Heroes. I think was the biggest. Like that was when he was at his hottest, when people were talking about him the most, for sure.
But I think now, because Lollipop Chainsaw was co-written by the dude who directed Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, that is.
I don't know if people remember Lollipop Chainsaw. I don't remember that being very good either.
It was fine. It was a very straightforward like 3D action game that just had like a fun framing device of you play as this cheerleader who would kill zombies with a chainsaw. But it was like a pretty rote character action thing. I never finished it, but I had fun with it. Sky Reynolds says, I thought this was going to be a game based on the band, The Smiths. Well, as it turns out, I don't know that I would say that it's based on that band, but every letter, all the letters you find are Smiths lyrics. There's like notes you find that sort of are supposed to give you hints, and they all include, they're all named after Smiths songs, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't remember exactly, but this is all 7 of the killers are named Smith, and that is because Goichi Suda is really into the Smiths and also Joy Division. Let's see, what the hell is Black Knight's Sword? That he was involved in that, apparently, in a side-scrolling action platformer game.
Okay.
That was released in December of 2012. I don't remember that at all. But apparently he was involved. He didn't direct that. He co-wrote it, apparently. He also, one of his first games as a writer was Super Fire Pro Wrestling Special, which has a single player mode that really is a super, sadly, there is not currently an English patch for it, but some really weird stuff goes down for a wrestling game, for any game, but especially for a wrestling game. When you get to the end of the single player mode of that game, some really weird stuff goes down. And there's a million people on the internet who will spoil the ending for you, but I'm not gonna say it. Let's just say things get dark and weird, especially for a wrestling game at the end of that game. And you don't need to read the text to understand what's going on. Like, the pictures make it pretty clear what's happening. But yeah, let's see here. Oh, that's right. And he produced Diabolical Pitch for the Kinect, which was like that weird baseball thing. Liberation Maiden for the 3DS. Yeah, that's some like weird mech fighting game. Let's see. So yeah, Let It Die he was the executive director on Let It Die. That was the last new thing that he released. And then before that, Killer is Dead was his last directing credit. And then they talk about The Silver Case and the remake of The Silver Case were both directed by him originally, but the remakes were not. He oversaw them, but did not direct them. So there you go. But he did a really weird game called Flower Sun Rain that was like unreleased in the United States for a long time.
I think that's on Steam too, isn't it?
I don't know, but it's on. I have it on DS. So that one came out right before Michigan Report from Hell, which you and Coffee played for during October last year.
Yeah,
that was the thing he did. But Flower, Sun, and Rain is really, you play this like detective in a hotel. It was originally a PS2 game, but it came out on the DS years after the fact, and that's the only English language release, I think, but I could be wrong. But I enjoyed it. It's weird though. It's very weird. But again, I feel like he's gotten a lot more conventional as sort of time has gone on, which isn't the worst thing, but you know. But yeah, the DS version came out in 2009 in the US. And looks like, no, it's just PS2 and DS, so there's a different game you're thinking of his that has a...
I gotta say, this game looks pretty fucking great.
Yeah. And this style was sort of his like visual signature for really up through No More Heroes. He was still making games that largely looked like this. Lollipop Chainsaw did not look like this. Shadows of the Damned did not look like this.
Oh boy. Taste my big boner.
Taste my big boner.
Not much going on in that one. Did you ever finish that?
Nope, never finished it.
That game was. I really was hoping that game would have been like two people who make video games that I really love making a style of video game that I really love, and it just was not.
It just didn't come together.
It was not good.
I kind of feel like I want to give it another, another
don't.
go at some point, but
I think you're good.
Think so?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I haven't played it in a long time, but I really did not.
Perfidious Leaf asks if there's a reference to the song This Charming Man. Probably. I don't remember what all the letters are titled or all the notes are. I don't remember what songs are all referenced, but that's a pretty well-known Smith song. He says it's the only Smith song he cares for. I gotta say, I really like the Smiths. They're like one of my probably 20 favorite bands of all time.
Okay.
Yeah, they're up there. I really like the Smiths, so I would say you should listen to more Smiths.
All right. You know what? You should listen to Joy Division instead. They're better.
Yeah, but Joy Division only had 2 albums.
You can listen to like a bunch of New Order albums or some of those.
There's a whole bunch of New Order albums.
Yeah. couple of those are real
And
good.
a lot of those are really good. Yeah, I probably like New Order more than the Smiths, but I also like New Order like a whole bunch. So
Yeah, yeah.
but I like the Cure more than all of them, to be honest. So
I think I'll pass on that also.
Perfidious Leaf says he's tempted to slog through Suda's PS1 games, which yeah, well, the Silver Case is available now in English, but the other three are not. And as he says in his comment, they're all visual novels, and his Japanese is far from great. Yeah, I would maybe start with the currently available version of the Silver Case if you want to do that. Maybe see where that takes you, because that's out on Steam and PS4 and stuff. So
I wonder if you can change the controls because I really want to make so right click turns you around and space aims, but right click should be aiming, and space should probably turn you around.
Or you could just plug a controller in and like play with a controller.
Yeah, but then I can't aim with a mouse, which is what will totally break this game and make it super easy. I really always wanted I always thought that this would be the ideal gun con game.
Yeah, this would have been a good something like kind of like Snatcher, where you use the pad to like do the adventure game stuff, and then when you can use
honestly,
the fire to shoot.
This is like a 2-button game anyway. Mm-hmm. So with the gun con having that one button on the side, you would have been all set. You could just push that to run forward, and then
the first gun con didn't have the D-pad on the.
No, not even the D. Yeah, I'm not even talking about the D-pad. I'm talking about just that big red button.
Right.
You really
but I'm
need
saying
to run forward and then turn around. So you just need like 2 buttons. Right. I got a soul shell.
So you did. You got a soul shell paragraph. I don't know what the name of that symbol actually is. I just know that it represents a new paragraph. Oops. So is this are you just gonna keep talking to this guy over and over again?
I'm not really sure where I'm supposed to go now. I thought you went through that door, but it's not letting me do that.
I was gonna say there's only so many ways you can go.
I mean, there's literally only 2 ways mostly. Maybe I can go to a different floor now.
I wonder if this is gonna, if playing with the mouse is gonna break this in a similar way to the Wii version of Resident Evil 4, where like the Wiimote aiming sort of like made a lot of the combat kind of trivial, but I kind of loved it for that reason.
Maybe I should have been more closely reading what Travis was saying. Create some serum. How do I use the serum?
I don't remember. It's been so long since I played this.
There should be a menu button, I think. Isn't there like a menu that you can bring up?
Probably a pause menu or something.
Yeah, like you can upgrade your characters, I thought.
Yeah, you can.
There we go. Here's the stairs. Life is precious, and the enemies mean business.
There's nothing heavenly about them. The sort of weird invisible enemies actually are kind of like there's a Kenji Eno game called Enemy Zero for the Saturn that has, except the enemies stay invisible in that game. They don't.
Yeah, there's got to be a menu because I should be able to switch characters, I would think.
Yeah, you can switch on the fly, I think, can't you?
Should be able to, yeah. Maybe, can you do a Google search, maybe?
I can try. Probably not a lot of people trying to play this with keyboard and mouse. Oh, here we go. There's a Steam discussion.
Don't make me say it again. Wait here.
This is just recommending what you should rebind to.
Wait here.
Apparently you can use F11 to open the config tool and look at the keyboard configuration.
Down attack. Probably I can upgrade the abilities from here.
I've changed my makeup. Did you notice? Men. They never notice these kinds of things.
I think I use Kiede here just about all the time. So what button did you say? F11?
F11 according to this.
Keyboard. There we go. Skip scene, accept, space, cancel, escape. Menu, up, down, left, right. It's WAS. Walk is W. Turn with S. Change perspective, less control. Battle mode, space. Reload, use special with Q. Map with M. Menu is tab, apparently. I didn't think that was doing that, but... Oh, that's quite an effect. Let's try it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Personalities, items, memos, blood. And then, yeah, you can change your personalities here anytime. Okie dokie. I forget, what do you remember that eye icon means in the top left-hand corner of the screen?
Does that mean that there are bad guys nearby or something? I don't remember exactly. Or maybe it just means it's saving. I don't know.
No, it definitely means something, but I don't remember what. Wipe out.
That's your health.
Ah, I see. Oh no.
I don't remember what all their special ability. Like, what's her special ability again?
I think it's a single shot kill. Or no, maybe that's what's his face? The other guy I was just
Dan.
as. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she gets a thing that lets her use like a scope. It's locked from the other side. Oh right, here's Tell me, how's Old Smith? Are you ready for today's hint?
I am.
I checked the candlesticks. A strange design indeed. It is hidden here. The order is hidden here. You want to know more? Then use this mask. Shoot the mask and the mask will tell you.
But the mask lusts for blood.
Mm-hmm. Turn the air conditioner on.
Insufficient flame. I hate it when I don't have sufficient flame.
Especially when it's crazy cold out.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your Thanksgiving plans? Anything good?
It's gonna be pretty low key. Megan dry brined a turkey today, and so that's happening. And then
Does that mean she just rubbed salt all over it?
it's like more. There's a little more to it than just salt, but yeah. And then like you kind of peel up the skin a little bit and put the seasoning in between the skin and the meat. But yeah, so it's not a whole turkey either because there's just two of us. So we're gonna cook that and make some stuff. Just hang out here. Is it? I mean, really, we're not doing anything. What about you?
I don't know. Probably not too much. I don't think. Let's probably go and see that Widows movie. There's some pretty good things about that, possibly.
Yeah. It's just you and your mom and your brother.
Yeah.
You don't have like other relatives that
Yeah,
you go.
my aunts and uncles do some stuff, I think. But we haven't done that in a long time. We usually go out and eat. Anyway.
Sky
Carrier
Reynolds
pigeon.
says happy
Here's your,
Thanksgiving. So
here's your Smith
here's your
lyrics.
Smith,
Yeah.
your Smith reference. Yeah, if you haven't left yet, stick around for the Smiths lyrics.
Bianca the pigeon. There are 7 in the Smith syndicate. Dan Smith, whose large caliber revolver. Smith, 2 full pistols. Sorry, that's one of the, that's not actually the Smith lyrics thing, I don't think.
No, it's that the letters have names. Like you can look at them. And
inside the.
it'll say the courier memo name. Will say it's like the name of a Smith song, or like a Smith's lyric. I don't remember exactly.
Let's make some serum.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
And then I believe that you end up like kind of finding out the backstories for most of the characters, right? By playing
Yeah, I
through
think so.
various missions.
Yeah.
Oops. And then it kind of. And then it. Yeah. Damn. I forgot how much talking there was.
Yeah, this is the
But I guess there
early...
really isn't much more to this. I mean, it's like
Right.
this is pretty much all there is to Killer 7. And goes well with the sprinkler. So are you still just working on Spider-Man?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm doing a thing with another dude on YouTube who asked me to be a guest in one of his things, and so I actually just played a bunch of Defender the other night.
Oh wow, I died.
Defender is really hard. Like, that game is still... It is not friendly to beginners, and it is not... I mean, and I've played it before. It had been a minute since I'd played it, but man, that game is... When they talk about quarter munchers in, you know, old arcade games like that, Defender was one of them, man. But other than that, yeah, no. I played through most of Mega Man X4 while we were watching wrestling on Sunday.
Mega Man
I got
X4, eh?
Yeah, I was playing. I did a zero, not a whole playthrough, but I killed all the Maverick bosses, so I met like the Sigma, you know, whatever.
Yeah, how'd that hold up for you?
It's good. It's Sky Reynolds says weird death animation. Everything is weird in this game. It's all weird.
Yeah, it is all weird.
I think until, you know, Mega Man X7 and X8, when they added Axel, which was like not really needed, but I think in a lot of the earlier Mega Man games, when you can play as someone who's not Mega Man, that kind of makes it almost more interesting. Like playing as, you know, because you could use Zero in X3, but not really, right? Like, like you could call him in and use him for a little while, but you couldn't just like play the game as Zero. He was like it was like you'd switch out to Zero for a, you know, a certain amount of time or one stage or whatever, but then you went back to playing as X. And X4, you actually you choose at the beginning if you're going to play as Zero or play as X. They have totally separate storylines and, you know, totally separate upgrade scheme. And it's really I think the game is still good as X, but I think what makes it one of them, you know, probably one of my 5 favorite Mega Man games, like full stop, is that, you know, you have this option to play as Zero, and it fundamentally changes how you play through a Mega Man game to play as someone who really only has a melee attack. Yeah, that really changes everything about how you approach the game. And sort of similarly, like Mega Man and Bass, which I played a little bit of when I was capturing footage for the Super Nintendo draft. I played a little bit of that, and I was like, oh, that's right, like playing as Bass is completely different than playing as Mega Man, and sort of makes this game more interesting / kind of worth playing just in general. Like, it's not a great Mega Man game if you could just play as Mega Man, but playing as Bass sort of varies up the formula enough that it's like, oh no, this is like a pretty interesting thing, and it's kind of worth doing just because playing as Bass is so different. And to some extent, that even applies to like Mega Man 9 and 10, where you can like play as Proto Man and stuff. but that's not quite as it's not quite as totally different as playing as Bass and Mega Man and Bass, or Zero and Mega Man X4. And actually, this Megan and I were watching the Caps game, and while we were doing that, I was playing through. Because we talked about a bunch of Mega Man games, we talked about a couple of Mega Man games last night. I decided to take the plunge and re-buy the Mega Man Legacy Collection on my Switch, since I have it on PS4. Because it's only $15 on Switch as a download. So I had played through most of Mega Man 2. Like I beat all the Master Robots in Mega Man 2, and now I'm like on the Wily Castle. So I'm playing a lot of Mega Man and Spider-Man. But Spider-Man is good. I'm a few hours into it, and you know I like. There's a bunch of stuff there's sort of like.
I'll be honest, I wasn't on the internet a lot during this time, just to jump in with what I'm doing right now, and this might have been my first real exposure to all these weird emoji, or not emojis, all these weird anicons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Emoticons. Nobody really uses those anymore, I guess, do they?
Not really. Some of them, the shrugging guy, which was not really a popular one back then, but people like the shrugging guy still. You get the fire ring.
Yay!
From a severed head in a dryer.
I do not remember what that does.
Yeah, I don't. Assassins should have better manners.
Whoa!
That's sort of like if that scene in My Bloody Valentine just got really weird, instead of just being like, there's a head in a dryer. It's like, there's a head in a dryer and it's going to talk to you. But yeah, Spider-Man is good. The traversal feels really great. I was talking about this a little bit to you last night after we finished the draft, but the traversal stuff feels really good. And honestly, for me, that's the difference between a sandbox game that I will spend some time with and one that I will probably just be like, okay, I don't need to play very much of this. Like, you know, so the traversal stuff feels really good.
It has to be fun to get around, or else you just end up fast traveling, and then there's kind of no point playing an open world game.
Right. Like I loved Metal Gear Solid 5, but I still don't understand why they made it an open world game. There was no point to that at all, because there's not really anything to do in the world, and traversing it isn't very fun. So yeah, I just take helicopters from place to place generally in that game, because there was no reason to explore the open world. Or even like LA Noire, they went to all this trouble to painstakingly recreate like 1946 Los Angeles, and I literally had my partner drive the car all the time because there was no reason.
I did drive mostly just because there wasn't a hell of a lot else to do.
Well, there was clues to find, and
yeah, there were cigarette butts to pick up, and
yeah,
I mean the interview stuff was pretty cool, but
I enjoyed that game. I think that was one of our top games for I think for that year, whatever year it came out.
Oops,
I never actually finished it though. I never did like the last series, and once you start playing as like the insurance adjuster or whatever, like I never did that stuff. I never finished it.
It's okay. I mean, it's basically just LA Confidential.
Right.
Which is a very good story and book. So.
Wait, I thought you told me. I feel like you told me around the time it came out that like at the end it turns into Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like.
Yeah, it has elements.
The transit
Who Framed
scheme
Roger
and everything
Rabbit borrows from, a lot of those books sort of touch on the same thing, right?
Right. Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like. Or like Chinatown with the water and stuff like that. I mean, it's got elements of a lot of that stuff.
Forget it, Eric. It's Chinatown.
Do you remember where that candle was? Because now I can go light it, I think. know that I have the fire ring, but I don't remember.
Is it on
Actually,
the
if I remember
second
correctly, I
floor?
think this
You have a
might
map
actually...
key. Can you hit M for
Oh,
map?
that's right, I can. There we go. Bird. Question mark, fire ring, first floor. I don't think it actually... Second floor... I know, if I remember correctly, this is actually like one of the most difficult levels to navigate in the whole freaking game.
Yeah, the opening stage is like annoying to get around in. Sky Reynolds says, "Who Framed Roger Rabbit?" I haven't seen that in forever.
That's a great
You should revisit it. It's great. I actually like it a lot. I loved it as a kid, and I like it even more now because I get everything. There's so much that I missed when I was a kid. There's so much stuff went over my head as a kid. So much that now I completely understand. And now I'm like, oh, that's what's going on. That's what that reference is.
Yeah, it's yeah, it has a lot of like whatever, like the old detective story and noir
Right. There's
stuff,
a lot of
but...
like noir tropes that you probably weren't aware of the first few dozen times you saw it.
Yeah. Also, you're not equipped to appreciate like the nuance of what's his face's performance until you
Bob
get
Hoskins.
older. Yeah, that's one of my favorite performances in a movie, like period.
Yeah,
he's incredible in that film.
Yeah, well, especially if you watch if you watch any of the behind the scenes stuff. Like I have the 2-disc special edition DVD, whatever, and there's a whole bunch of behind the scenes footage and stuff of like without the animation applied, and you're like, oh, he's acting with himself essentially, like for this whole movie.
Yeah,
and they make it work. Also very impressive is that was like one of the last movies made to not use, like there was the only thing a computer did I think in that movie was composite some of the footage together at the end, but like all the animation was hand drawn.
Looks really good.
Yeah, so it's... And also, like, probably the only time you'll ever see Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse in a movie.
Yeah, that probably won't ever happen again, huh?
Or Donald Duck and Daffy Duck.
Is this where that thing was?
And the reason that all of those characters are in the same scenes together is because, like, Donald and Daffy are doing the piano bit in the bar. That's because Warner Brothers would only let Disney use them if they could only use Daffy Duck if they gave Daffy the exact same amount of screen time as Donald, and so that's why they're in those. And like same with Mickey and Bugs, like they're in the skydiving joke where Eddie falls off the building in Toontown. And the reason they did it was just because, like, okay, well, we don't want to have to like mess around with figuring out how many frames or how many seconds. Yeah, put them together in the same scenes, and then we know like they were in the same.
But that's also like that's kind of what you want from those scenes anyway, is for those two characters to interact, because that's something that you would not see anywhere else. So
right. And I don't think as a kid I didn't really fully appreciate it either. Like now I see that and I'm like, damn, that's Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny like having a conversation. And it's like that you'll never see that anywhere else or ever again, probably, unless Disney buys Warner Brothers, which seems unlikely because AT&T just bought Warner Brothers. So although Warner Brothers would passed around quite a bit. There was a thing on CNN the other night that I think Megan went to do. I think it was when she was at she was at like a pro bono workshop thing.
Yeah.
And so CNN was just on, like she left it on when she left the apartment before I got home from work. And there was a thing about Ted Turner and like his life and times on CNN, and it was talking about like, well, first of all, it totally skipped over WCW, which is some bullshit. But it was talking about
WCW at all.
No, didn't. Nope, what I saw did not, and it was right at that time too, because it was like, oh, Ted bought the Superstation, and and turned it into one of the first cable channels. And then he bought the Atlanta Braves, so he'd have something to put on the Superstation. And then like jump ahead to like the late 90s. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, hang on. You can't talk about the Superstation without talking about professional wrestling. That's garbage. But it did talk about like, it's like, oh, but Ted was about to lose, in 1998 Ted Turner was one of the richest men in the world, and he was riding high and owned a controlling share in Warner Brothers and blah blah blah, but things were about to take a turn for the worse. And it shows like the AOL logo, and I'm like, oh man, like how that's still just like that AOL at one point owned Time Warner is completely insane. Especially since now AOL is like a tiny fraction of Verizon that like basically doesn't, whatever. Sky Reynolds says Ted Turner's owner of WCW is kind of like Citizen Kane running a newspaper for his own amusement. I think it would be fun to run a wrestling company. I think there was a little more to it than that. I think that as much as people won't admit it, maybe even Ted Turner himself won't admit it at this point, and certainly these kind of documentaries won't mention it because, pro wrestling is whatever. Pro wrestling was very lucrative, and it was lucrative for Turner when Jim Crockett Promotions was broadcasting on Saturday nights on TBS, the Superstation, one of the earliest cable channels. That did a good business, and it made him some money, and it wasn't, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Also, he didn't really run the wrestling company. I mean, he owned it, but he had a sort of revolving door of people who sucked early on, sucked pretty bad in various ways, and then Bischoff, who sucks in some ways, but certainly during his initial run did not suck as a wrestling promoter. Generally speaking, he did some stuff right.
He really didn't start to suck until he was an on-air personality.
Well, I mean, a
character,
right.
not a.
I would say he was an on-air person.
Yeah, not an announcer, but
when he was Eric Bischoff, the boss, Hollywood, Hogan's. Man, remember those 1997 Nitros? Yeah, those 1997 Nitros where there would be like 3 Hogan and Bischoff promos in every episode.
Broke me.
This guy says he was always loyal to WCW because they were the top rated show on TBS. They were. And even when AOL Time Warner decided they were going to get rid of, we never got this far in the What a Maneuver weekly wrestling podcast, but at the end, it was still Nitro was garbage, but it was still one of the highest rated shows on TNT. It was one of like the 3 or 4 highest rated shows on TNT. And just do it. Jamie Kellner, I believe was the guy's name, who was in charge from the AOL side of things. Didn't like wrestling, and that was it. Like, he didn't like wrestling, so even though it was, huge and popular and one of the highest rated shows on the channel, they were going to get rid of it. He says, Sky says Ted made a couple of appearances. There was when they signed Hogan, and then there was a televised match between Hogan and One Man Gang. I don't remember the One Man Gang thing, but yeah, he very occasionally appeared, but not often. And even when he appeared, it wasn't like he wasn't running the day-to-day operations of the show. It was, Bischoff or Jim Hurd or Bill Watts or whoever. It wasn't Turner. I mean, obviously Turner could do whatever he wanted because he owned the company, but he didn't really run things. And even then, Harvey Schiller was like a step between him and whoever was running WCW, because Harvey Schiller was the head of the Turner Sports Organization. So, but yeah, I don't even remember how we started talking about this, but
you said Megan watched a thing on Ted Turner.
But what did? Oh, because we were talking about Warner Brothers. We're talking about Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse being in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So, yeah, but I think I've heard, and I guess maybe this has changed now that Disney's acquired so many companies and everything, but I've heard that Warner because they're such an old company, even though they've had so many multiple owners. Warner owns the largest library of media in the world. They own the rights to more movies and music than anybody else.
I'd believe that.
So yeah, well, especially because in the after the sort of golden age of the Hollywood studio system, the golden age of Hollywood, they started acquiring the libraries and rights of a lot of their rivals, smaller, like RKO, I think, is all owned by Warner Brothers now. Their new library. I mean, just a ton of older studio stuff is owned by them. I love when you kill these guys and without hitting their weak point, they just
yeah, they just bleed all over the place.
They just bleed everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Okay. I'm almost positive that the thing I just did is exactly what I did the first time I played this game, which is that I flushed the toilet and then backtracked too far and couldn't remember how to get back to where this pipe was, where this thing fell out.
Yeah, right. An object. Go towards an object.
There should be... Oh, it's locked. I gotta find the room with the weird lock with the... Should be back this way, I think, and then I go north at the library, maybe? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the later levels are a little bit more linear, and they're actually
they definitely are
better for it. Oh, here it is, right here. Yay.
This guy says Warner owning RKO is funny because RKO used to distribute Disney. If Disney hadn't branched off, they might be a subsidiary of Warner today. Yeah, possibly. That would be a lot. Well, they didn't. I don't think they were ever owned by RKO. Their films were just distributed through them. I don't think they were actually part of RKO, so I don't know if that would be the case, but that would be funny. It's weird how things turn out. One of my favorite things that it seems like a lot of people don't realize, because they don't talk about it a lot, especially in their American press and stuff, but Sega is owned by Sammy, which is if you remember any Sammy games for the NES, to think oh yeah, the people who put out Thundercade are gonna own Sega someday. You're like, no way, that's never gonna happen. That's not possible.
Thundercade is an underrated co-op classic.
Thundercade is a decent shooter.
Yeah, it's NES. It's an okay shooter for the NES. You ride a motorcycle and do some dope fucking shit though.
Yeah. Wasn't in your top 5 though.
No.
Didn't make the cut for the draft last night.
What might have been in my top 5 most rented games, because it was one of the few co-op games that you could get your hands on and that they had at the rental store that I had access to when I was a kid.
Yeah. What is now where that rental store used to be in Batavia, New York?
Well, this was in Elba. And I don't know what's in there anymore. I think that a farm may have bought it and uses it to house migrant workers, but I'm not 100% sure.
All right.
If that's the same building or not. But it's in that same area.
The building that used to house my local rental store is now a little cafe bakery thing by my parents' house. And they actually have a deal with my dad where my dad's restaurant, they make desserts for my dad's restaurant.
Oh, cool.
But we went in there to get breakfast once when I was there, one of the more recent times. And I was like, this is super weird because this is where I used to rent video games all the time. But now I'm having a bagel or whatever.
Yeah, so I think that's where that little corner shop was in Elba, and then there was where the Blockbuster / Zappers was, I believe, is a Dollar Tree or a Family Dollar, one of those kind of stores. And then when Blockbuster opened a new store, after they dumped the Zapper stuff, that's a Mark's Pizzeria, which is one of the most bland, boring pizzas I've ever eaten in my entire life. That's a crime. It's a fairly big chain locally, but imagine a pizza that has gluey cheese because they don't shred their own cheese. It has the starch on it, and it also the sauce tastes like tomato soup.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really not.
I don't
good.
want to imagine that.
It's not good. It's not a good pizza.
doesn't sound good.
If you're ever in the Buffalo, Rochester area, don't go to Mark's Pizzeria because.
All right, hot tip.
Yeah.
The one Blockbuster video that we used to go to. So the local rental store closed at one point. The family who owned it sold it or whatever, and then they sold it to like people who just wanted the space. Like they didn't. Yeah.
Shit.
So then we started going to Blockbuster because there was no more locally owned place. We went 100% of the time we were going to Blockbuster, and the first Blockbuster, the one that we went to frequently, is now a shoe store. And the other one, the one that opened up after that one, and then that my friends Wes and Kurt both worked at when we were in high school. That one I think is a bank, I want to say. I believe it's a bank now, but I had two friends who worked there, and yeah, I don't know, man. The people talk about how the experience isn't the same, but I think for me it largely is, because like I used to go to the video store and I would just like wander around being indecisive for like a half hour, and now I like open Netflix and I just browse through all the stuff and I'm indecisive for a half hour. So it seems like it's largely the same experience to me. I just don't have to leave my house to have that
Disturbing letters written in blood.
How soon is now? There's another Smiths reference for you.
Really good audio cues also. Yeah,
Well,
now that I'm kind of getting used to the kind of weird controls. I'm kind of getting into the groove a little bit.
I was just gonna say we've been at this for about an hour.
Yeah.
So
But I think that this still looks really good, and maybe I'll
yeah,
finish
it does.
playing
It's
through
a,
it. I don't know.
this is the thing. I mean, I've said this for a long time.
I bought it
but
partially
feel-
just to encourage more of this kind of thing. Like, I love it when they port old weird games to PC and put them on Steam.
Yeah, they did this with Vanquish too.
Yeah.
Not that long ago. But I mean, I think that when you have an actual style to your game, it ages a lot better than photorealism. Like if you look at games from this era that were going for photorealism and play them now, most of them look
Don't make me say it. Wait
not
here.
great, you know. But this, you know, upscaled and everything looks great because it's not supposed to be photorealistic. So this art style lends itself very well to being upscaled to 1080 or whatever. I don't know if you can play this game in 4K if you have the setup.
Yeah, I mean,
for
it was
but-
at whatever 1440 by 2560 when I was playing it a minute ago. Like I can play it in full screen and it still looks good.
Do you have a? I thought you didn't have a 4K monitor.
No, it's 1440 by 2560. It's the step in between 1080 and
right.
it's whatever. It's not
2K.
yeah.
Or whatever.
Except 1080 is because 1080 is 1920, which is actually 2K.
Right.
This is like it's like a weird tweener.
3K.
Yeah, it's stupid. All those designations are dumb. Like 4K doesn't actually really mean anything.
It's true.
Um,
Also, unless you have a gigantic TV or you're sitting super close, you really can't tell the difference. Anyways,
Let's see what's in the boiler room. Oh,
you're gonna go in there and there's gonna be a bunch of static, and the Undertaker's gonna like throw you into a ladder and stuff.
The time is now. I believe that's the clue that I need, but I think that's good for this. I'm glad I picked it up. Like I don't feel. I think it's still on sale for like $17.99, and I'm sure that
I mean, the fall Steam sale started today, so
Yeah,
I think everything is on sale.
this was on sale just as like in celebration of its release, and then I'm
right,
sure it'll be probably if you wait a year, you probably be able to get it for $10 or $6 or something.
Or it'll just show up in a humble bundle or something.
Yeah. But yeah, this is definitely my favorite Suda game. I mean,
it's $17.99 right
No
now.
More Heroes is the one that is the most fun to play. in spots anyway. Like the boss fights are all really cool in that. But this is the one that is the most interesting to me stylistically and in terms of its story as well.
Did you get the digital art book and 2018 remastered original soundtrack when you bought Killer 7?
No, I didn't buy the special edition version of it. Well, this game does have a very good soundtrack as well.
Well, you can currently get it for $8.99 on Steam.
Because yeah, there was definitely a point with the No More Heroes, especially after I finished the first one and got into the second one. Was like, I get it. Like I understand. I get the point. Whereas this game is a little bit more subtle and weird, and has kind of a like, in the way that you could like endlessly dissect like a Coen Brothers movie, and find the myriad different like deep cuts of various things from pop culture or film past and their movies. You can kind of do the same thing with this game. Like the Smiths references and stuff are the most obvious, but there's just so many different little nods to different pieces of pop culture that you could write. There was, I don't know if it's still up or not, but there was like a 6,000 word essay on game facts, like breaking down every little thing that was in this game.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, like which was actually like a really cool piece of video game writing from, you know, back in 2005 when that was not a thing that people did. I have no idea if it still holds up or if it's still on there, but it was kind of a fun thing, especially because I picked up a lot of the American references in this game, but there's a ton of references to Japanese pop culture that I was not familiar with at the time and probably still am not, because I don't watch a lot of anime, or, you know, I didn't grow up in Japan. But that's kind of what the heart of this game is about that like East-West culture war, specifically between Japan and the US, and then this character Garcian that is from the Middle East and then was like trained in Japan and grew up in the United States, and like the way that like the ghosts of all these people that he assassinated live in his head and sort of influenced him. And it's really there's some really interesting stuff in this game.
Yeah.
I don't know, did I draft this when we did the PlayStation 2 draft? I don't remember. Maybe I just gave it an honorable mention. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
Anyway, you know what? It's 13 degrees out. I'm going to go to bed, and I'll wake up and
Sounds legit.
I'll talk to you in May.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Yeah. I'll talk to you in May or next week, whichever comes first. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week.